Hello, and welcome back to Philosophizing with a Hammer, where we dig deep into the ideas of some of history's greatest thinkers and see what wisdom we can bring into our lives today. So, I want to start today's episode by saying a huge thank you to all of you who tuned in our first introductory episode last week. And I didn't expect all of that support, so thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Something that keeps the show going for sure. And I've been absolutely blown away by the positive feedback and the support you've shown. I'm so glad that you're on this journey with me, and it really means a lot to hear that you're enjoying the show and connecting with the ideas that we are exploring together. So, if you haven't yet, I'd love for you to follow the podcast so you don't miss anything from the upcoming episodes. And if you've been enjoying the content, please consider leaving a rating and a review. It helps others find the show and lets me know that what we're talking about is resonating with you. All right, enough with the thank yous, and let's dive into today's topic. So, in today's episode, we're starting a journey into the mind of one of history's most provocative and misunderstood thinkers, Friedrich Nietzsche. Born in 1844 in Germany, Nietzsche lived a life that was both brilliant and radical, let's say. His work would go on to challenge not only the foundations of philosophy itself, but also the very way we think about morality, culture, and existence. He's known for his radical ideas. So he didn't just ask questions, no, he broke apart old answers and called us to create new ones. This is where the concept philosophizing with the hammers comes from. It's about questioning old ideas and common ideas, let's say, in order to create new ones from a Hegelian perspective that is trying to follow the dialectical method. We talked a little bit about that last episode in the introduction. Basically, who was Nietzsche and why should we care about his ideas today? Well, his philosophy revolves around central themes like free will, like the rejection of traditional values, the role of power in human life, and perhaps most famously, of course, his declaration that God is dead, a very radical declaration. Nietzsche, however, he wasn't interested in merely tearing things down. No, his work was about pushing humanity to new heights, encouraging us to live authentically and overcome our limitations. So, you might ask the question, what can we still learn from Nietzsche today? In a world where many of us feel lost or confined by societal norms and expectations, Nietzsche's call to embrace personal responsibility and create our own meaning and live beyond mere survival is as relevant as ever. He was a philosopher that was way beyond his time. And I always think that I will always hold the opinion that he is timeless. His ideas about self overcoming and the will to power encourage us to push past our limitations and strive for mastery in both our personal and professional lives. He invites us to reject passive acceptance of inherited beliefs and instead actively shape our own values and identities. And in today's episode, we'll bring something about his most crucial ideas, and we'll begin to unpack one of them, which is the will to power. So, the concept of the will to power, which means the fundamental drive that he saw as the force beyond human action, it can still challenge us to think about ambition, creativity, and self expression in a more profound way. So, we'll also explore how embracing the will to power can lead to a more meaningful life, one driven by personal growth and the creation of something unique. So, let's start at the beginning. We're going to start by diving into his philosophy and explore how his ideas still continue to influence how we think, create, and live today. So, before we get into it, I want to ask you something. Is survival enough? What I mean is the mere act of staying alive and getting by really what drives us? Or is it something deeper? something that pushes us to do more than just survive, something that fuels our ambitions, our passions, our desire to create and achieve. Well, Nietzsche thought so. He believed that within each of us is a force he called the will to power. For him, this wasn't just about survival, it was a drive that propels us toward growth, mastery, and expression. It is what pushes us to challenge ourselves, actually, to shape our world, to make our mark, and to be more than what we are today. And this episode, we're going to break down what Nietzsche meant by the will to power. We'll see how it goes beyond simple survival instincts and how it shows up in the way we live, create, and also strive. So, we'll also explore how the will to power can be a force we recognize and cultivate in our own lives as a way to connect with what drives us forward. All right, now let's dive into the heart of today's episode, which is the concept of the will to power. If you've never heard about it before, well, don't worry, it's not as complicated as it might sound. In fact, it's one of Nietzsche's most fundamental ideas, and understanding it can give you a new lens through which to see your own motivations, ambitions, and the world around you. So, what exactly is the will to power? At its core, Nietzsche believed that the will to power is the fundamental force that drives all human actions. But here's the key difference. So it goes beyond the basic will to survive. It's not just about that. Now, you might be familiar with the idea of survival being a central motivation for living. Think about what Charles Darwin proposed with natural selection, the idea that our instincts are driven by the need to survive, reproduce, and continue the species. Well, that's what we call the will to survive. It's instinctual, it's primal. Nietzsche, however, takes it a step further. The will to power is about much more than simply getting by or surviving. It's about striving to be more than we were yesterday. It's about asserting ourselves in the world, shaping our environment, and pursuing growth and creativity. It's the drive to master one's own fate and leave an imprint, on the world. Nietzsche didn't just mean power in the sense of domination over others, though that can play a role. But more broadly, he saw the will to power as a force that pushes us to create and innovate, to overcome obstacles, and to rise about what drives us down, to rise above our limitations, to go beyond that. It's a dynamic, transformative force that propels us toward personal greatness and the pursuit of our potential. So, let's take a look at how Nietzsche himself talks about this idea in his work, mainly Thus Spoke Zarathustra. In this book, which is a very famous book, it's like a fictional work other than a philosophical one. It tells the story of Zarathustra, who tries to embody this idea of the will to power. And if you're getting into Nietzsche, I would really advise you start with this book, because it's not complex, it's easy to read, and the ideas are perfectly structured and well written in a narrative form. In this book, Nietzsche writes, "The secret of the greatest fruitfulness and the greatest enjoyment of existence is to live dangerously." End of quote. This is an example of the will to power at work. Living dangerously means pushing boundaries, going beyond mere survival, and embracing the uncertainty and challenge that come with striving for something more. In another book called Beyond Good and Evil, he elaborates further. He says, what is good? What is good? Everything that enhances the feeling of power, the will to power, power itself in man. End of quote. And here Nietzsche connects goodness with the pursuit of power, not in the sense of oppressing others, but in the sense of asserting yourself, asserting your will, and developing your potential to its fullest. For Nietzsche, being alive means being in the process of self overcoming, constantly striving to overcome your own limitations and create something new. So, the will to power isn't just about individual ambition, it's a force that drives all human progress. And it underpins everything from scientific discoveries to artistic creations. Every breakthrough in culture, every new idea, every revolution in art or thought comes from this drive to push us beyond, you know, as the title of the book says, beyond good and evil. That is beyond familiarity, beyond what is narrated here and there, into creating something new. Take, for example, the arts. Many of the greatest artists, musicians, and writers have been driven by a need to express themselves, to make something that captures the human experience in a new and transformative way. Think about a painter like Picasso or a composer like Mozart. Their art wasn't just about surviving or existing. It was about expressing their unique vision and pushing the boundaries of their medium and reshaping the way we understand the world. The concept of the will to power also shows up in our everyday lives. Maybe not in great and grand gestures, but in the way smaller things are functioning and how we do them each day. Every time we push ourselves to grow, to learn, to take risks, we're challenging and channeling actually this drive. Whether it is in our careers, relationships, or our creative pursuits, the will to power manifests as that inner push to go beyond what we know, to challenge ourselves and express ourselves in a new way. In essence, Nietzsche's will to power is about overcoming, about becoming the highest version of yourself and reshaping your world in the process. It's the force that drives us to transcend the limitations of who you are, to create and to innovate. Also, to leave the mark on the world. It's not about surviving, it's about living with purpose. So, living with power and the drive to make something meaningful. Now that we have broken down the core of Nietzsche's will to power, let's turn our attention to how this idea shows up in the world around us today. How does this ancient concept manifest in the modern age? In the careers we choose, in the art we create, and even the technological innovations that shape our future? Well, Nietzsche's will to power is still very much alive and driving us, even if we don't always recognize it. We can start with personal ambition, for example. When you think about ambition, what comes to mind? Well, for many, it's tied to maybe career goals, personal growth, success. Today, we live in a world where many of us are constantly striving for mastery, whether it's in their job, their hobbies, even in their relationships. And that striving for excellence, well, exactly what Nietzsche calls the will to power. That's the will to power in action. For example, think about how people work to become experts in their fields. Whether it's an athlete training for the Olympics, a scientist making a groundbreaking discovery, or even a writer crafting their latest novel, these individuals aren't just trying to survive or get by. They are driven by an inner force to be the best, to perfect their craft, and to leave a mark on their respective fields. In a way, they are all engaged in what Nietzsche called self-overcoming. So, constantly pushing themselves to surpass their limitations, to push boundaries, and to reach new heights of mastery. And it's not just about individual success, it's about finding a sense of purpose, many of us feel compelled to create lives that have meaning, lives that reflect our values and passions. Whether it's the ambition to change careers or to start a new business, these decisions often come from a desire to assert ourselves in a way that aligns with our true purpose. It's the will to power manifesting in our personal goals, driving us to break free from the ordinary and create a life that feels uniquely ours. Um, Now, let's look at the world of creativity and art. Art has always been a realm where the will to power can be seen in a full force. Artists, musicians, writers, they're all driven by a need to create something that speaks to the human experience in a unique way. These people are basically who want to make a statement, to express something deeply personal or revolutionary, and to challenge the status quo. Their work is not just about surviving, it's about leaving something behind that resonates with others and pushes the boundaries of what is possible. Think about the painters who revolutionized art, like Picasso, Van Gogh, one of my favorite painters, Jacques Louis David, or even modern day digital artists. Their work hasn't and wasn't just about creating pretty pictures. It was about expressing their inner vision, defying traditional techniques, and shifting the way we perceive the world. In music, you see the same drive. Musicians like Beethoven, who pushed the boundaries of classical music, or rock bands, like the Beatles, who constantly refined popular music, they were all driven by the will to power to create something new, something that had never been done before. This drive to innovate is everywhere in the arts, and it continues to inspire new generations of creators to challenge conventions, especially societal conventions, and experiment with new forms. Basically, to push art in directions we could never, ever have imagined. Every time a new genre of music, a new form of expression, or a new artistic movement emerges, it's a sign of the will to power in action. Um, Finally, let's take a look at the will to power and how it plays out in the world of innovation and technology. If there isn't any area where Nietzsche's concept is alive and kicking, it's actually in the entrepreneurial and technological spaces. Think about the entrepreneurs and tech giants who aren't just building companies to make a living. They're trying to reshape entire industries. Elon Musk, for instance, is not only transforming electric cars with Tesla, is also trying to revolutionize space travel with SpaceX. His work isn't just about profit. Maybe somehow it is, but it's also about taking out on the challenge of changing the way we live, work, and even travel. And it's not just about tech moguls. Scientists and actually researchers all over the world are pushing the boundaries of what we know, looking for solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable only a few years ago. To push for renewable energy, for example, medical breakthroughs, artificial intelligence are all expressing this drive. It's the will to power at work in the modern world, challenging the status quo, the conventions, creating new technologies and imagining futures we can only begin to grasp. In fact, when you step back and think about it, most of the progress we have seen in the past century has been the result of people tapping into the same drive to not just survive, but to create, to make things that are bigger than themselves, things that transform society and challenge the way we think about the world. So, whether you're striving for personal growth, creating art, or pushing the limits of what's possible in technology, the will to power is there. It drives us to become more than we are, to express ourselves in new ways, and to leave our mark on the world. Now that we have explored the will to power and its presence in the modern world, I want to take a moment to turn the focus back to you, the listener. Nietzsche's ideas are powerful, but they're only truly transformative if you can apply them to our own lives. So let's take some time to reflect. I want you to think for a second. Where in your life do you feel driven by something deeper than just survival? You think to yourself, no, this is not just what life is all about. It's not about waking up in the morning and going to work or going to study, coming back home, engaging into a hobby or something and sleeping and repeating the same thing again as a means of survival. Um, Maybe you could think about it as something that drives you in your career or a passion project you've been working on. Maybe it's the way you've dedicated yourself to mastering a particular skill, pursuing a meaningful goal. Think about the moment when you've been completely immersed into something. Not because you had to, no, but because you wanted to. Not because the teacher told you to read Crime and Punishment for the Russian literature class. Well, no, because you wanted to read Dostoevsky, because you wanted to learn about Russian culture and Russian literature in the 19th century. This is where the will to power is at work. Then ask yourself this: in what areas do you feel an urge to create, innovate, or make a unique impact? Is there something within you, maybe a dream, an idea, or a calling, that pushes you to express yourself in a new way, to challenge the conventions of your field, or to contribute into something unique to your community? Perhaps you felt that creative spark in you, but you weren't sure how to channel it or what it meant. Now, I want to invite you to reflect on how these moments could align with Nietzsche's concept of the will to power. They may well be signs that you are striving for something more than just surviving. You're pushing yourself to create, to grow, and to overcome. Um, the main reason, for example, that I started this podcast, it's not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I wanted to speak some of the ideas and some of the conclusions that I came up with from the readings that I made and my enthusiasm in philosophy with the listeners, and have a conversation with a listener too, maybe exchange ideas. So it's something that I wanted to do. So, how can we apply the will to power in our own lives? Well, here are some few ideas. According to Nietzsche, let's start by setting personal goals that align with your strengths and passions. Nietzsche believed in the idea of self overcoming, which is the process of pushing past your current limitations. But it's not about setting arbitrary goals, it's about setting goals that are connected to your true passions and talents. What are you truly passionate about? What strengths do you have that can be developed further? Take a moment to think about the goals that excite you, the ones that make you feel alive. These are the goals that will allow you to tap into your will to power and move beyond mere survival into a life of true and self expression. We can also look at embracing the challenges as opportunities for growth rather than obstacles. What does that mean? Well, we could look at it as a way that we all face challenges, it's a part of life. But the will to power invites us to see the challenges not as things to avoid, but as opportunities to test our strength, to grow, and to overcome. The next time you face a difficult situation, whether it's at work, in a relationship, or in a personal project, you might ask yourself, what can I learn from this? And how can I use this challenge to push myself further? Embracing these moments as parts of your journey can help you grow in ways you've never imagined. Seek ways to contribute something unique to your field, Nietzsche would say. The will to power isn't just about self improvement, it's also about creating something meaningful in the world around you. So, whether it's in your career, in a creative project, or in the way you engage with your community, think about how you can contribute in a way that reflects your unique perspective. What can you offer that no one else can? Well, this doesn't mean that you have to create a masterpiece or revolutionize an industry overnight. It just means looking for ways to express yourself and make a positive impact, however big or small. I want to leave you with this thought. Embracing the will to power means creating a life that goes beyond merely getting by. It's about living with intention, striving for greatness, and finding ways to contribute to something meaningful to the world. It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving, let's say. About pushing beyond your limits and about creating a life that reflects your true potential. So as you go on, with your day, so I encourage you to ask yourself this question: how can I apply the will to power in my life today? What is one step that I can take toward growth and toward creating or toward overcoming? Whatever it is, know that you have the power within you to make it happen, according to Nietzsche. The famous concept of the Übermensch in German, which means the overman, the superman, a concept that we will discover and discuss in details maybe in future episodes. As we wrap it up for today's episode, let's quickly recap the ideas that we have explored about Nietzsche's will to power. We have discussed how this fundamental human drive goes beyond the simple will to survive. Instead of just getting by, Nietzsche's will to power pushes us to assert ourselves, to create and to continually overcome our limitations. It's the drive behind ambition, behind artistic expression, and the innovations that shape our world. Whether it's pursuing mastery in our personal lives, pushing boundaries in our careers, or creating something unique in the world of art or technology. The will to power is the force that drives us to make a mark and leave a mark on the world. We also looked at how you can recognize this drive in your own life, whether through your ambition, your creativity, and the challenges you face. So, I've offered some ways you can nurture this drive by setting meaningful goals and embracing challenges and contributing something unique in the world around you. Now, as we close, I encourage you to think about one area in your life where you can channel your own and your inner will to power, your own being from a Heideggerian perspective. Like, what's one goal, one challenge, or one creative pursuit you can focus on that will help you move beyond mere survival and towards something that reflects your true potential? Take a moment and commit to that one thing today. And remember, you have the power within you to act on it. Before I sign off, a quick review for next week's episode. We'll dive into one of Nietzsche's most famous and provocative ideas, which is God is dead. We're going to explore how this critique of traditional values invites us to reevaluate our sense of purpose and personal meaning. It's something that is often misunderstood. It's going to be a thought-provoking episode, so stay tuned. So I'd like to say thank you if you have made it this far. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating or review. Your feedback really helps others find the podcast. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the will to power and how it's showing up in your life. Thank you for listening to Philosophizing with a Hammer. Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep creating.